Welcome, everyone. This is the 21st regular meeting of the Government Transition Advisory Committee. Today is Tuesday, June 11th, and we'll be here from 6 to 8 p.m. My name is Julia Meyer. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Engagement and Community Participation Manager for the transition. Our co-chairs, Amy and Juliet, will facilitate tonight's meeting. Next slide, please. I'm just going to take a moment to go over some meeting logistics. This meeting is being recorded. A copy of the recording will be posted on the transition website under past meetings and events. It's also being live streamed on YouTube. For today's meeting, we have closed captioning available, ASL and Spanish language interpretation. To access Spanish interpretation, you can click on the globe icon on the bottom of the screen. To access closed captioning, you can click on the CC button on the bottom of your screen. For committee members, please take this moment to change your chat settings to everyone so that folks in attendance can see the chat. Please also remember that the chat is part of the public meeting record. For community members listening in, we have the Zoom Q&A feature available. You can submit questions or comments through the Q&A function. We may not always answer them live, but we read them and they also become part of the public meeting record. At today's meeting, we have some time held for verbal public comment, but as a reminder, folks can submit public comment at any time by calling 311, submitting public comments through our comment form on the transition website, or by emailing us at transition@portlandoregon.gov. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Amy to review tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Hello. Tonight's agenda includes committee business and public comment. Next, we'll move to change management and employee engagement. GTAC's role is to review and track employee engagement metrics and feedback and track implementation of employee town halls and attendance at town halls. Then we're moving to engagement and communication reports and strategies. GTAC's, those were the recorded videos that we had. GTAC's role is to conduct two community presentations per member, with at least one provided to communities traditionally left out of city hall decision-making, and evaluate implementation of the transition engagement plan. Next, we're looking forward to our final 10 months. GTAC's role is to reflect, identify lessons learned, and ideas for improvement. We want to come together as a group and try to think about what is our legacy as a committee that we're going to leave when we wrap up in March 2025. And then lastly, community feedback and staff responses related to civic life, district coalitions, and neighborhood associations. GTAC's role is to report community feedback and questions to transition staff providing answers. At the end of our meeting today, we'll review our upcoming meetings. Next slide, please. Some committee business. Juanita has a flight and is uncertain whether she'll be able to attend. Mani will be late, otherwise we expect full attendance. I also have an update. Amy Wood has resigned, and as a result, Brian Bellica has been promoted from alternate to a voting member. Amy wanted to share that she's resigning due to increased commitments elsewhere. She's grateful for the opportunity to serve GTAC for the past year. It's been a wonderful part of a group. It's been wonderful to be part of the group, and that she's that's so passionate about the future of the city. Thanks all of you for your continued work to ensure a successful transition. And Amy quote. Sorry, that was confusing. That's a quote from Amy. We thank Amy for her service and congratulate you, Brian. We're happy to have you on board. So we need to approve the May 15th meeting summary. Does anyone have corrections before I entertain a motion?
Move adoption.
Second.
Okay, great. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those in opposition? Okay. The meeting agenda passes, or the meeting summary passes. Next slide, please. Our final order of business is to review our working agreements. 1, in discussions, challenge ideas rather than individuals. Offer constructive suggestions. 2, approach different opinions with curiosity. Seek to understand. 3, keep the needs and concerns of the local community and the larger region at the forefront of the work. 4, arrive on time and prepared to the best of your ability. Let the group know if you're unable to attend a meeting. The co-chairs will aim to incorporate tools for breathers. Well, keep multitasking to a minimum. Keep focus on objectives of the meeting. Utilize co-chairs to note additional topics for discussion by submitting topics via writing and email. We would really love to hear from folks. 7, honor the decisions of the group. 8, contribute to the overall success of the group by finding ways to participate that best meets your needs. 9, step up and step back. Collectively work to ensure that every member who wants to be heard is heard. 10, embrace conflict and work with your fellow committee members and staff to find ways to give each other feedback. The co-chairs will aim to incorporate various feedback tools. 11, use I statements. Now to Julia to introduce public comment.
Thank you. So we have 10 minutes held for public comment. We asked folks to sign up ahead of time on our website. We have time to take 3 people. We had 1 person sign up ahead of time. So for those of you in attendance, you can have the next 3 minutes to ponder if you would like to offer public comment tonight. And if you do, you can raise your Zoom hands. Tom has signed up. Tom, I see you. I'm going to promote you to a panelist. If you can accept that invite, you could come into the virtual space. I see you. You can be on or off camera as you wish and unmute yourself. I'll give you, I'm going to time you. And if you're still talking at 3 minutes, I'll politely ask you to wrap up your thoughts. Welcome. We're glad you're here.
I was trying to make sure that it's Tom Karwacki from University Park Neighborhood Association. I thought this was dealing with some of the issues dealing with the neighborhoods and civic life and all of that. And I wanted to make some comments. I thought it would be at the end of the meeting, so I'm going to listen and would like to reserve the time to respond if possible at the end.
Actually, Tom, this is the time we have held for public comment. I think it's
No.
okay to share your thoughts now. And you can always share additional thoughts in writing or by calling us after the meeting.
Okay, I'll send them in by writing because depending on your discussion, that might change some of my perspectives. In general, I think the May 30th letter from the mayor really forced issues with respect to neighborhoods. Several neighborhoods wanted to change the district coalitions that they've been assigned to, and I think that was a big issue. And I don't know that the voters intended when they voted for this change in government to change all of the relationships between neighborhoods. And so that's my initial comment, and I'll send you some other stuff later.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for being here. So does anyone else who's in attendance want to offer any public comment? I will pause and give folks a few seconds to ponder.
I don't know why Juliet's name is up there. Just saying. Either.
That's.
Did you want to say something, Darlene?
I do, Juliet. I don't know why your name is on my picture. That's
I
one
don't
thing.
know. You gotta stop impersonating me.
I know. Let me just take control here. No, I just wanted to follow on a little bit with what Tom said. I'm Darlene Urban Garrett. I'm the executive director of Neighbors West Northwest, doing business as the District 4 Coalition. And I do feel like the coalitions got really impacted by the transition. And I don't really think anybody took that into consideration at all, the impact that was going to happen with the district coalitions. When the decision was made that we would have 4 coalitions for the entire city, it did create a lot of angst among our neighborhood associations. And it is creating a lot of angst amongst the district coalitions in reorganizing and trying to get straight on what this means. I mean, Neighbors West Northwest went from 11 neighborhoods to 33 neighborhoods like that. And that's been a big impact. And I know Juliet knows, and I'll just say it here, and we were not funded to triple in size. The city didn't provide the revenues needed to triple in size. So there's a lot of issues related right now to moving forward. We're on it. We're moving forward. We're probably more together than any coalition at this point, but it has been a trying situation for the district coalitions. And I see it's on your agenda, and I appreciate your discussing this. That's all. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for being here, Juliet Doppelganger.
We're good.
I wonder if
Okay.
I guess I could
One more call. Does anyone else in attendance want to share anything? Okay. Thank
oh.
you both for. I'm sorry. It's
This is Tom again. I was just going to simply say that from a perspective of civic life, the service that's provided to the neighborhoods is usually insurance, and that is about 2 cents on the dollar of the percentage of the budget. And the money that actually goes to neighborhoods actually is less than 1% of the budget. So that might change a little bit with the district coalitions and with the new work plans, but it's pretty consistent. So that's a real concern because the services are really people.
okay. Thank you so much. And just as a reminder, folks can submit public comment to the Government Transition Advisory Committee at any time outside of our meetings. You can call 311. You can email us at transition@portlandoregon.gov, or just fill out a really short public comment form on the transition website. Thank you all for being here, and I will turn it back to Juliet.
Thanks, Julia, and good evening, everyone. We have until 6:45 to discuss change management and employee engagement. And I just want to clarify that this is the first time that we've had the presentations delivered to us ahead of time by video. And this was the first video in Julia's packet, I'll call it as an old-fashioned word. This was the 16-minute staff presentation from Jamie about change management and employee engagement. And if we have time later, this kind of came out of conversations with Amy and me about how to just manage the flow of the meetings and the content delivery. So we are really interested in what you think. If we have any time at the end of the meeting, we'd like to hear from you. Otherwise, just please send us email about pros and cons. I think there are pros and cons myself, but we appreciate Julia taking that suggestion and making it happen. So I just lost my slideshow. Anyway, as a reminder, we have 2 tasks in this work area. 1, to review and track employee engagement metrics and feedback, and 2, to track implementation of employee town halls and attendance at those town halls. This was an area identified in our recent one-on-one meetings with the committee as an area that we felt disconnected from. We asked staff to pre-record a presentation of their work to date so we could focus our time on your questions and reflections. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Before we open it up for a discussion, Jennifer Chang back there from the transition team has 2 slides to share on employee engagement metrics, and then we'll take your questions and comments. Jennifer.
Slides in your slide deck. Oh, great. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Jennifer Chang, she, her pronouns with the transition team. Thank you for having us back. And you heard or had the chance to hear Jamie's update via the video, which was a progress that over the last several months related to several areas of our change management plan. And one area we wanted to be sure to also share are some metrics related to the various deliverables and activities that we've been busy implementing. So on this first slide, so this there's two slides, and the table just describes the activity, and then the current progress to date is in the middle column, and then in the far right column is what our original projections have been. So related to town halls, we currently have 10 town halls that have been completed to date, and an average participation of employees attending is 1,530 per topic. So each time we have done a town hall topic, we had two separate sessions. They've been virtual sessions, typically in the same week, just to allow for that time frame, additional flexibility for people to make them. And our original projections and goal that we're working towards is a total of 18 town calls in total. So we're on track. We have 8 more town halls at minimum to complete before the end of the calendar year. And we have those planned out primarily like every other month. So we just had town halls in late May. Our next ones are going to be in July. And then we have some in September, I believe October, and then December. So then the next item is the town hall, the field office hours. And this is a new component that we added at the beginning of this year, because what we heard related to the town halls is a lot of times people can't make a virtual meeting or log onto their computer, especially staff members who are working in field offices or working different shifts. And so this component has been in advance of the town halls. We've planned specific meetings to go to field sites, primarily Jamie. And there's one recently that both she and I had been working on just about 2 weeks ago or so. So this is in water and parks at PBOT. We've been able to host and organize going to staff meetings or at field sites and be able to distribute the information in kind of a more condensed version, either through flyers or just being there and sharing those updates verbally. So there have been over 500 employees that we've been able to reach through this opportunity since the start of the year. And then our panels with leadership, we've continued to host and organize those. 3 of them are completed. They've been on a range of topics, including district governing and leading in districts was our most recent one. And then we have one that was scheduled for mid-June. It's now moved forward to now be in July, but that one's going to be focused on values centric, leading through values, like value-centric leadership. And it will have panelists actually from our own leadership bureau directors who are sharing about how they've been working and collaborating over the years. So we're on a track with 3 of those completed and 1 more scheduled in our original goals for panels. Then for the next slide, we have change management trainings. There have been a total of 3 new change management sessions that have been developed and now have launched as of spring, and we'll be hosting and facilitating sessions through the city's training portal called City Learner. And they are all focused on change management, but very different aspects of it, incorporating change management principles. But we've partnered with 3 different consultants, Anthony Cobb, Shiloh George, and Martha Pellegrino, who are delivering different sessions and really focusing in different styles as well. So it's been great to have managers sign up for that. Currently, we have on the same, we've completed a variety of sessions, and a summary of the participants is listed there. A total of 10 sessions have been delivered. Over 200 people have participated. And so our goal by the end of the year is to have a total of 23 sessions available and completed. Then finally, our city, next to final as our City Insider, that's our monthly newsletter for employees. It comes out once a month. And it's featuring news specific to the transition as well as citywide news. We have an average open rate of 20.8%, and we've had 5 newsletters published. And then finally, our Transition Ambassadors Program, which is a new program that has launched just last month and is being led through our colleague Tiffany Penson in BHR People and Culture team. And it's bringing together employees and leaders within different service areas and bureaus to serve as ambassadors of the transition. So being able to share the updated news and be able to respond to questions that they're hearing in their bureaus on their teams. And so we're excited to have them started 23 ambassadors in total, and they cover all 6 service areas and also city administrator's office. Any questions or thoughts, maybe reflections on this information?
So let's look at the time and let's see a show of Zoom hands of how many questions people have right away, and then I can sort of allocate the time accordingly. Doesn't look like it's going to be a problem. Oh, well, I have a question of you, Jennifer. When you were talking about the newsletter open rates, are they increasing as time goes along?
That's a good question. I didn't.
I
you have
don't know
the-
the averages. Do you know what the open rate, I'm sorry, Dan.
No,
Do you know
sorry.
what the average rate for the city, average open rate for city and state has been going up?
I don't know.
We can definitely get, yeah, so we.
We do know anecdotally, we've heard recently that, in fact, I heard this in the field too, that people didn't realize that the City Insider was related to transition. So a lot of people have been ignoring it because it's a unified comms newsletter that comes out. So we're talking internally, in fact, I've talked to Daniel about this, like, how do we better promote the City Insider and like make sure people are aware of like what news it's actually covering. And so hopefully, I mean, there's only been 5, so hopefully over time we'll pick up on that.
Okay, well, let's have questions about Jennifer's slides while she's here, and then we'll talk about Jamie's video.
Oh,
So,
we're together.
We'll text you later.
since my notes are separate, I thought other people's might be. So, Leah, we'll start with you and then we'll go to Bill.
It's great. I have no questions, just flattery. It was great. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was incredible to see just how much you're doing and the thoughtfulness behind it. There were so many things that I loved. One that really stood out was the educational videos that you've put together, like the 5-minute ones, and they just seem so thoughtfully produced and like the amount of time, that like people don't need to have an hour-long video about each of these things. Like, what's the right sized amount of information for folks? And I loved it. And just thank you. That's all.
Thank you. And that was kind of chunking it into smaller bite-sized pieces was direct feedback we received from our training team. They said, there's a lot of great information. You have a lot of information, and can you put it in a shorter amount and be able to then share it out in that way?
Right? Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer, FKA Terry, as I see on the screen. My question relates to your presentation and then the presentations that we watched make substantial investments in change management. Can you highlight some of the main concerns or the changes that one is trying to do? I'm not talking about the structure of city government, but my perception could be a general advice to individuals could be, don't worry about your job. We're not cutting jobs. It's that your manager, second level, third level manager might change, but keep doing what you're doing and doing it well. But there is a substantial, the substantial investment indicates concern, and I also heard the phrase that one needs to transform internal culture. That may refer to siloing. Enough perception on my part. Could you talk a little bit about what one is, what the obstacles or resistances are that one's trying to address? Thank you.
I don't mind starting, and let's see. So I'd say in terms of some of the complexity of our change management approach has been the complexity and the sheer like amount of change on multiple levels that we're aiming to support people through and communicate about. And so sometimes it is high level structural, sometimes it is way down to the team and like something has changed, or maybe hasn't, but people still have heard from colleagues and they're feeling they are still impacted. So it's getting clarity around what specifically employees and which employees need to hear at what time, and what is that best trusted messenger or approach to be able to reach them. And so I think that is why we have a variety of ways to reach out to people, and a constant need to reconnect and find out, is that working well? Are people receiving the message? Do we need to change something? You know, so I think maybe just that to start. Amy, you have.
Well, I would just like to add that, you know, the significant investment in change management is largely because we know from change management best practices that to get people to embrace change over time, to really, you know, bring it on and be okay with it and work with it and grow with it, we have to get them through this period where there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of anxiety, and there's a lot of the unknowns. And, you know, Jennifer said it really well. There's so much complexity to this change, and we have a very large organization. And so we're investing a lot of time and effort, mostly to communicate, mostly to fill the void of not knowing anything and being very confused and frustrated and not feeling like they can personally connect or relate to the changes that are happening, or see the benefits to themselves and their jobs and their ability to provide services to community. So we're doing a lot of that investing now, so that as the changes happen and as they go on into the future, people really lean into them as much as possible, as opposed to resist and you know, make it more difficult for those changes to stick.
Thanks for that clarification. We'll go to Jane now and then Lori.
Thank you, Julia. I just want to echo what Leah said. Jennifer, this is really phenomenal work. And there's loads coming. This month is going to be a really, really busy month. And I'm looking forward to seeing the change, because when I looked at the data from that Amy presented, over half of the employees at the City of Portland are saying that they've not shared their opinions and perspective, or they've shared their opinions and perspective and they don't think that they've been valued. And less than a half of the people at the City of Portland presently think that things are trundling along well and that their opinion matters. So the way that I looked at that was the fact that they've not been as engaged, or the engagement has not been planned until now. And I think that Jennifer, you're onto a fabulous thing with the training and peer learning. I think what you've set up there is going to be phenomenal, and people are going to learn not just about the changes in their organization, but they're going to learn skills for life. And so congratulations on that. It's a fabulous program. I can't wait to see a survey in September. Really nicely done. Thank you.
Great.
I wanted to also echo Leah on the doing the videos ahead of time. Thought that was really helpful. We could see it in our own time and spend as much time. I actually could go back and listen. So it was really helpful. So I appreciate doing that. I also compliment you on the holistic view of doing this change management. I think it's been really well done. The one thing that stuck out to me that I was a little concerned about, one of the indicators in there was understanding change at 45%, understand some, but not the majority of the change. And I just wondered, I thought that was reason for concern, and I just wondered if you felt the same and what if anything, are we doing about it?
Well, I think it's always reason to be concerned, right? Like, I mean, it's part of our primary goal is to get as many people to understand the changes as possible. We also see positive trends on that question. So that's a question we've been asking over time, and that's the one that is improving over time. So I feel like our strategies are working. And to some degree, I think the last person spoke, sorry, Jane, it is accurate in that a lot of these strategies we've been building towards and have launched fairly recently in the last couple months, at least, kind of like really like a machine going. And so we really expect to see that number, you know, increase and improve over the next few months. But some of these strategies haven't had a lot of time to really take effect. Okay, thanks.
Go now to Fred and then Joe.
Thank you. I really also, I thought it was on mute. Sorry. I muted myself to talk. I'm so used to, I had a Zoom meeting earlier. I really enjoyed the video in advance. It helped us have more time to have this open discussion and to hear Jennifer's additions. I really appreciate the ambassador program. I think as an employee outreach in a way, and I remember us talking about it or being informed of them at the outset, like a year and a half ago. Beginning, it was in the plan. You can see why maybe it didn't happen until now, because you didn't have the July 1 pending transition to the service areas and that in place. I like that idea of having these ambassadors within the service areas and teams, because it's a way to enhance that coordination of the bureau staffs as they're clustered into this new service areas and learning to communicate with each other. Are they meeting as ambassadors regularly, maybe with the service area, what's it?
The leadership.
Deputy Administrator,
Right.
yeah, DCA. And secondly, the City Insider, that it's underutilized or misinterpreted as not really dealing with the transition. Can GTAG members access that or get a copy of that as well? I think it'd help us understand what the employees are going through. Not that we want to affect it or anything like that, but just the informational aspect. Thanks.
Yes, yes, definitely. We can share the City Insider. I'm trying to think. It's on our intranet, huh? But we can definitely share and forward. Yeah, it's all the copies that have been sent out to employees. Yeah, and with the ambassadors, so they just launched and had their first introductory meeting mid-May. And so they are setting up bi-weekly meetings all together. And they're currently working towards planning an event in early July, a kickoff event, and currently are not meeting with the DCA team, but DCA team and the Bureau, the executive leadership team are aware and have been updated on the launch and the purpose of this program. And so we're making those connections. Like,
it's still kind of in the formation phase. I guess I want to add that the reason why many of these strategies are just getting launched is because we were doing the early work of making them sustainable. One of the things we are concerned about is that as a transition team, we are very temporary. We are going to end next fiscal year, the end of this fiscal year. And so we wanted to build kind of these systems that were going to last beyond us. And to do that, we had to work with partners outside of the transition team that exist at different parts of the city. So we were looking for the right expertise. We were talking to people about whether or not they had the ability and, willingness and vision to like take on this work. So transition ambassadors is a good example of that, is that it took us a fair amount of time to find the right home for it to exist outside of us, so that when we're done with our job, that program can continue to serve employees in the long term.
Oh, great. Thank you.
We'll go to Joe.
I have a couple of picky things, but I want to say I really appreciated getting this in advance and being able to take the time that I needed to take notes, to listen to things again, really understand, and not spend that time in our meeting. So it feels like a really, really good use of our time. I also really appreciate understanding what you're doing sort of for the first time. You know, there's been this change management out there that we've heard, and it's really good to understand what it is that you've got in mind. I don't know if you can pull up the slides, but one of the slides had a sort of the cycle of change management, the change cycle.
Oh,
And it,
Change curve, was it? No,
it's sort of a spiral. It goes around like, you know, this, and it goes from contemplation to preparation to action to maintenance. And then there's lapse or relapse, which makes it seem like, you know, there's a problem with backsliding or something. You know, but any system is going to have to do some fine tuning and some course correction. And so I just assume that somewhere in that action and maintenance cycle, we're not waiting for things to go wrong, but there is a built-in sort of loop.
Yes.
Okay, so that's just,
Yes,
okay.
yeah, I think the, another, I think you said those words around process improvement and identification, right, is also falling within this cycle, and hopefully able to prevent or be able to respond, right, to that lapse and relapse. But it is a part of the process, and yes, I think it is in our plan around the importance of process improvement and feedback loops, right? So that we're hearing back from and then making improvements. I think the change management trainings is a great example. The evaluations are built into the sessions. We've collected and been receiving feedback on the sessions as they've been going and been able to make corrections to them, you know, honing in on the applicability of them to the charter transition changes, right? And also many other feedback we've received from participants, such as making it more participatory, more breakout and kind of dialogue in some of the sessions. Some of them already have that built in. So, and we've been able to incorporate those and are making those improvements as we go. Yeah.
Thank you. A second sort of detail is there's one that's headed anticipated opportunities in the new form of government. And it's really encouraging that the ones that people said were increased collaboration across bureaus and programs, better communication across bureaus and programs, better service to community, citywide strategic vision. Those are great things. I wonder if those are choices that people just had to check off, or if that was an open-ended question about what do you anticipate? And it'd feel even better if it was that.
It was our poll and it was a checklist. There was also an other box. And so there was ways that they could add their own comments. And we even got some of those comments, like, these are way too sunny and optimistic of options. Thank you very much. I think I remember that comment. These are, yes.
Yeah.
And the reason we asked this poll, some of the poll questions we asked are relevant for the particular town hall topic that we're doing. And so we asked this particular question because we were really kind of like gearing up to have a conversation about the opportunities and benefits of the change. You know, we were talking about the transition ambassadors during this town hall. We were really trying to kind of, you know, we're moving towards this culture of, you know, change and embracing and leaning in and that kind of stuff. So this was relevant just for like a particular town hall to get a snapshot of if people were really thinking about opportunities.
It's great to see those responses. And that's, I think, what people had in mind when they voted for the charter change. And then the last, I don't think has really anything to do with you, but on one of these slides, it happens to be slide 10, back a couple. I saw for the first time on that timeline that the recruitment plan for the council administrator is going to be in October. I think, yeah, it's right down there at the bottom. Recruitment plan for council administrator and officers. Is that city administrator?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
draft topics for sharing out what the plan may be, because after I think Modus does their work, and so timing wise, the sharing out.
So I misread that. I thought that was the council manager, and I'm sure hoping that
Oh.
person is on board long before this. So
Oh, city administrator.
I can. Great,
Oh, yeah.
great to know. Thank you.
DCA.
And I love the ambassadors. I think that's really, really cool idea.
We have a few more minutes. Any other hands up? Amy, did you have a question or was it answered?
No, I have the same thing as Leah, basically. Good job, and it was great to see it all laid out.
I have a question. Can you go back to the slide about the anticipated benefits or advantages of the new charter from a few minutes ago? It had, yeah, red one. So did you have a corresponding slide about fears, anxieties, concerns, anticipated issues with the new form?
Spreads.
We almost always acknowledge that people experience change differently, and we, in every town hall and every communication that we do, actually, we include the links and information about our City Strong resources, so employees can access whatever assistance they may need to navigate through the change. It's like deeply incorporated into all of our stuff. We did not ask a poll, like we didn't say, what are your kind of fears and anxieties, although we did just do one. I don't think we had done the town hall when we did it. Is it in here? Because the last question we asked was like, where are you, how do you feel about the change? And we
Oh,
asked
oh,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, so we did recently ask, and this is one of the polls that I was super excited to see, that the majority of people are kind of either in the optimistic or hopeful range of anticipating the transition. And there were very few people who were kind of in this, in the anxious and fearful category. And we asked this question largely because Jennifer and I wanted to get a snapshot of where on the change curve folks are so that we could gear our strategies or pivot our strategies accordingly. So just seeing that kind of optimistic and curious, hopeful stuff is really encouraging to us that like things are working and they're okay. We're moving in the right direction anyway. Hopefully.
2 more minutes. Any more questions? If not, I will pass it to Amy to talk about engagement and communications.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you to you, Jamie and Jennifer. So just some timing note, we have until about 7:15 for this conversation and 2 big topics. So I'm thinking we can break out our topics. So we have, like I said, until 7:15 on GTAC engagement and communications. As a reminder, we have 2 tasks in this work area. We're trying to relate everything back to our work plan. So we're constantly oriented towards why we're doing something. If you agree or don't agree, let us know, because we're very open to feedback about this change in the way we're doing things. So the 2 work areas are to conduct 2 quarterly community presentations per member, with at least 1 provided to communities traditionally left out of City Hall decision-making, and to evaluate implementation of transition engagement plans. This was an area identified in our recent one-on-ones as an area of success. Thank you to June and Daniel for recording these presentations and for your work on these items. We asked the staff to pre-record their work to date so they could focus our time on questions and reflections. So we have about 7 minutes. We'll say we have 7 minutes to talk about GTAC engagement report with June, and about 7 minutes to talk about communications with Daniel. So
15 and 15. 15 and 15.
right, 15 and 15.
15.
Great. Math. Okay. So we'll have 15 minutes and 15 minutes. So we'll start with June and her presentation about our work to date. Is there anything you want to say here now, June, or anything about the report? Okay, so I'll open it up to the floor for comments, questions. I have Lori and Fred. If folks can keep their comments to about 90 seconds or so, there's not too many people, so not a big deal, but just a good practice. Okay, go ahead, Lori.
I really liked the slide about that showed all the neighborhood associations that we've spoken to. I thought that was really helpful to see and wonderful to see how spread out it was. And I wondered, are we trying maybe again to reach out to neighborhood associations that we haven't spoken to see if they're interested? I know we did at one time.
Yeah, in the, interested in the transition or something different or?
Yes,
Yeah.
in the transition.
So I think one way we've reached back out to folks we presented to, and I sent an email out inviting all the folks that that GTEC has presented to give feedback on GTEC's recommendations. And then I think in the next week or two, I wanted to start reaching out back to folks who indicated they were interested in a ranked choice voting presentation. A lot of them are neighborhood associations, but not all of them. But yeah, does that answer your question?
I think I didn't ask very clearly. What I was wondering about is the neighborhoods that we haven't spoken
Oh,
to.
haven't. Got it.
Have we reached back out to them to see, are they interested? Because I believe in the beginning you reached out maybe to everybody.
Yeah, so we reached out to all of the neighborhood coalitions initially. And then Jose had reached out to all of the neighborhood associations in District 1 because they were in the priority area. And then for the other neighborhood associations, I have not reached out to them.
Maybe something maybe some of us could help with too.
Yeah.
Sure.
I had two more questions. Newsletter signups. I'm so disappointed that the number is so low, and maybe that's a good number. I know it's pretty close to our goal, but it's such a great newsletter. And the fact that only 3,000 people in the city of Portland are signed up for the newsletter to me is extremely disappointing. Is there anything that we're doing besides just trying to collect, are there email distributions that we could send it to or?
So what's very difficult about newsletter distributions in general is that folks have to opt in.
Right.
And so the city has hundreds of newsletters that exist. And so even if I were to ask all of the bureaus to please provide us your email addresses, they could not do that because it's illegal for them to do that because they didn't opt into that particular newsletter. And so that is the challenge as it relates to newsletters because there are spam laws associated with organizations, whether they're public or private, of sharing your information widely. So Lori, I agree. I think that number is not great. I mean, there's thousands of Portlanders that exist, hundreds of thousands of Portlanders that exist, but they must opt in to the newsletter in order for them to receive this information related to the transition. Having said that, I will tell you that the central communications team has been meeting. And for those of you who have ever lived outside of Portland, including a city called Lake Oswego, they have a mailed communication. They have a mailed communication piece that goes out to all of their residents over the last 20 years. So we are exploring the cost of that. We are seeing if that is a possibility to, it's going to be expensive. Someone made a noise. And we're also exploring to see if that is something that we want to test out. And maybe on January 1st, 2025, we send a citywide mailer to everyone so that people can opt in to the citywide newsletter. So those are things that we were discussing and exploring, Lori. But the complications is we've had a history of being siloed by bureaus. And so therefore the information that's released to the public has been very choppy and not consistent.
I will continue to forward it to my friends and encourage them to sign up. So I think they're really missing.
They must opt.
They're missing out.
Yeah, they must opt in.
Yeah, would you mind sharing with Terry? Again, I think it's one of you who are virtual.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Terry.
Next is
Right, Terry.
Thank you. I did the thing. I want to lower my hand. I don't want to hit the meeting. Okay. June, thank you for all that comprehensive information. I noticed that this is summer now and tabling should be big, but I only saw 2 tabling opportunities, Powellhurst and one other. And what about some of the street fairs, Mississippi Street Fair, Gay Pride is a 2-day tabling opportunity, and it's not on there. It's said or Beer Fest, I don't know. I don't know if you have to rent space, and that's for like something like Beer Fest as a vendor, or if the city or the county has some entree already, like for the health division or parks or whatever, that there could be some information, especially about ranked choice voting. I think it's so important, people that aren't targeted but do go out, that they start getting that sense. Maybe they don't read the side of buses, but I'm worried about all of the voters in Portland not all of them getting information about why that ballot looks so different mid-October. And so I just didn't see where maybe GTAC doesn't need to table. It's just certain opportunities and the rest of it is city staff. And that'd be fine. But I certainly, as our outreach, I'd be happy to stand with a city employee and help them, learn from them and share information about the transition. The policy forums in the engagement worksheet, I don't quite understand the structure of those. There's pick a role to play, like greeter or et cetera. Thank you. Who's the policy presenter, and just how is that meant to work in the upcoming months?
Great, so I'll start with the tabling question, Fred. So I think what you're referring to is right on the outreach spreadsheet. I have some tabling opportunities for GTAC on there, but I will note that it doesn't show the full breadth of tabling that we're doing as staff. So as staff, we've committed to doing at least for transition staff 3 events. So that's Portland Pride, Jade Night Market, and Juneteenth this weekend. And we're also, now that we have like that for those 3 that we're going to be at, we also have some that we're going to be at with 311. And so we're locking in 5 summer free-for-all events with 311, and we're going to continue to try to add. So we wanted to start with a base that we could absolutely commit to, because those are longer events and we need to make sure we have the supplies and people to be there. And then I think also based on Julia's survey of who's interested in tabling, I didn't want to just email everyone out at the same time. So just a few folks who are interested in going out there and tabling, you'll kind of receive more of a specific email about what that entails and signing up. And so that's kind of why the outreach spreadsheet looks a little bit incomplete. Okay. And I think for the policy discussions piece, that I probably should not have made that live as soon as I did, because I think I wanted to explain it to you all first. There is a second tab on the outreach spreadsheet that kind of is you can sign up to go to some of these different community listening sessions. And so we're still quite not ready yet to have y'all sign up, but I think what I hear you say is that clear directions would be useful, and also understanding the breadth of the things that we're going to be at this summer is really important to share with GTAC.
Thank you.
Leah and then Destiny.
Thank you. My question is building off of the great employee engagement stuff with the videos that they're doing. Sorry if I missed this, but I remember there being talk of recording a video of a GTAC presentation, whether it's ranked choice voting specific or otherwise. And I think it's great that we're hitting all these neighborhood associations, but I would like us to hit more people, not hit them, just gently embrace them. I would like to embrace more people other than neighborhood associations. And I wonder if we had easy to access videos that people could show at whatever their group may be, if that would be a cleaner way of getting the information out there without needing to send people live every time. But so did the recordings happen and I missed it? Okay.
We're getting ready to do it.
Otherwise, looked awesome.
Thanks, Leah.
Can I respond to some of the things that I'm hearing? On Friday's newsletter, you're going to see a great video that Destiny, yours truly, has been a part of. And that is to educate Portlanders that we have some changes coming on, including the way we vote, including the districts, including our new form of government. And the ending, of course, is for more information, go to the transition or call 311, et cetera. That newsletter reaches every single neighborhood association, including the officers. And the officers rotate on a regular cadence. And so we're updating that list on a regular frequency. As many of you know, because you read the newsletter that Christine and I put together every month, GTAC normally has a section in there in which for more information, you know, if you'd like, call a GTAC member, and this is the way to do that. So we are indeed reaching the neighborhood associations, is what I'll say. And on Friday, they will soon receive that 2-minute video, and there will also be a massive social media blitz that will be happening. And because I said it loud enough, all of your phones are now going to be receiving that media blitz because of artificial intelligence.
We could leverage that. Thank you, Leah. Destiny.
I wanted to go back to Daniel's comment about like you can't just opt in people to newsletters. So I'm wondering, because we did get that change management sessions with leadership, if you could get leadership in there to ask them as a call to service to have their newsletters feature specifically one to opt in and subscribe to City Insider. And then there was also even like Joe's suggestion of like inserting a QR or something to do that with water bills.
So for clarification, the City Insider is the employee newsletter.
Yeah.
That is for all statewide, or that's for all employees.
Yes.
The monthly transition newsletter is the one that requires an opt-in.
Yes.
And so your request or your question to me is, can we have other bureaus share a QR code or what have you so that they may opt into our newsletter? The answer is yes. What we have been doing, if you're paying attention to our social media accounts as well, is we are regularly featuring and asking Portlanders to opt in. And you are finding and seeing that we're not rushing to receive more information on transition related stuff. It's really hard to get people to opt in. I can tell you right now that I'm trying to opt out of newsletters as quickly as possible. And so I think your question is a really good one, Destiny. And we're happy to begin to work with bureaus to opt in. I really think though that citywide e-newsletter that I was talking about in early 2025 is really the one that we want to start sending people to and really develop the energy, time, and coordination for us to really start afresh here. Part of what the transition newsletter that I currently own, the list, if you will, that will morph into the new citywide newsletter. And you still have to opt in, even when there is that sort of transfer of sort of content. So it's we've talked to attorneys, it's a very sensitive subject and not one that's very easy. Sure.
Could you instead then, and I know you've been talking to lawyers, so this is that part, ask like leadership to, rather than asking them to opt in, encouraging one specific newsletter on ranked choice voting, perhaps?
Yes, so there are bureaus that have been regularly featuring our content if it's applicable to their sort of service or mission or whatever it is. We are working as an example with the Water Bureau, a Civic Life regularly. There's so many different bureaus in which we are pushing transition related content that is applicable to what their newsletter mission and service is.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if there's any other questions related to June's engagement report or that stuff, please put it in the comments or shoot us an email after. And we'll transition now to talking about Daniel's communications plan. Thank you for recording this video, and I'll open the floor for questions specifically around communications and yeah. Okay, I've got Joe.
Yeah, Dan, you mentioned a couple of times sort of transitioning from the transition communication to the sort of long-term communication. And, you know, there's a work plan for the communication discipline. I just wonder how the two are sort of integrating with one another.
So Joe, I believe you're referencing one of the last slides in which there's a central communications team and then there's three sort of columns. One being the team that is called Unified Communications today, the middle team being the communications team that will support city operations. And finally, we will have a communications team that will support budget and finance. That's never happened before. And then the third stream, which is my team, it's a transition communications team. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's part of it, but also even the fact that you were talking about doing a sort of blast in January, which is sort of the end of the transition, but also the beginning of, you know, the rest of our lives. And since they're working on a communication plan for, you know, the indefinite future, I'm just wondering how you're coordinating.
Yeah, so with those three teams, the person that oversees all of us, her name is Laura Hoffman. She is hard at work and sort of doing that. The other thing that, of course, is that we are waiting on is the official communications. Right, the official communications officer is really going to be the person that's going to be leading and sort of imagining and innovating all of that work. However, I mean, I know that there's some sort of size with that. What I will say is Laura has been working for more than 2 years now in unifying the city. This is why she built the Unified Communications team. The central communications team is now on steroids, if you will. It's so much bigger than it was. And in addition to that, from the org chart that you've seen, it is within the city administrator's office, and there's at least 7 permanent full-time employees that will be there. That's never happened before. The Unified Communications team consists of 3 employees. And so now it's doubled in size, which is really, really great. Again, your question to what is the long-term plan? We have to wait until the communications officer is there. But in the interim, we are creating some systems and processes to, again, try to set 2025 up for success. I previewed and teased the idea of potentially sending out that citywide newsletter with that opt-in idea that Lori brought in. And so that those are things that are in discussion and in flux. We need to, of course, find resources. We need to see if we even have capacity and or staff in order for us to administer something of that magnitude, because the city has never done anything like that before.
Thanks, Joe. Juliet, and then Leah, and then myself and Brett.
I'm just curious, Daniel, about your earned media, and I apologize if I missed this in the video because I haven't figured out how to retain everything I saw. I assume you're pitching stories to them, sending press releases. I mean, what kind of is how do you plan that? How do you develop your pitches? Are you trying to make those bite size? How are you what's your editorial calendar like?
Yeah, we have a really great public information officer who I know is listening. I think when I presented last time, we were at about 3 stories a week, and now we're averaging 4 a week, which is great. A lot of the information in our news that is produced currently is a lot of manual labor. What that means is we typically time our news releases based off of announcements. So announcements could be related to this, we're starting a voter education program. Announcements could be we have a new org chart. Announcements aren't, but they're smaller things such as, hey, Pat Doris from KTW, we have an opportunity for you to interview Mike Jordan. These are the topics that we're thinking. That's an example of a pitch. So Christine is doing all of the above. So that's the way that she's currently doing it. I think I had mentioned to this group before that we're looking to acquire, and we have since acquired a tool called Cision. Cision is going to be it's going to be a software that's going to be able to allow us to penetrate the national news outlets for the first time. I was just on a phone call with Cision as well as Fair Vote, which is that national organization. And when Fair Vote heard that we have Cision, their eyes lit up and said, I knew it. Portland is doing things that no other city has done before as it relates to leading in and amplifying the fact that we have a very aggressive way or a proactive way, if you will, in terms of showcasing that ranked choice voting is really important. So is representative democracy, so is open democracy. And so they were really excited to hear that we were doing all of those things and more related to our media relations campaign.
Thanks.
I had Leah next.
Oh, I put down my hand just because I wanted to get to everyone, but I'm here to just be a cheerleader again and just be like, this is so incredible. Just seeing everything that's happening now, I think watching the trajectory of where things have gone with communications and just how much, I don't know, how much is going on now is incredible. And I really appreciated that Marie Kondo is the inspiration. Sparks joy. Yeah. See that in everything you're doing, sparking joy for me. But one of the things that I really appreciated was talking about proactive media relations as it relates to multicultural media. And I'm assuming that means pitching more stories instead of paid media.
Correct.
Okay. And are there specific, sorry, I cut you off.
No.
Oh, I was gonna say, are there specific, like culturally specific media outlets that you're looking towards?
Yeah, so as an example, and you're going to see this again on Friday's newsletter, we've never been on Univision before. We've never been in the scanner, and you're going to be seeing that we have been in both of those, and we're going to be in the scanner now 3 times, I think, this month. And so those are the types of ways in which we are finally able to sort of see those proactive, results-oriented communication. And I think the other thing of it is, Leah, to answer your question, is the multicultural audience was just not ready for us because they were really waiting on you related to a ranked choice voting. They were not interested in org charts because that didn't benefit them. What does an org chart do to benefit community? It doesn't. It doesn't necessarily benefit districts either. However, with the interview that Zach and Destiny were a part of, because they were in that scanner interview, they saw the value and they understood it. And they want even more. And so that is great. And so that is sort of the momentum that we're slowly picking up. Similarly with Univision, we are going to be doing even more communication with them. I don't think anyone here was, oh, you were invited, but you were unavailable. Jose, don't worry, you'll get your time. And so there will be other opportunities, I think, because they're really, really excited to learn more. And another example to share is Christine has set up an informational meeting with the entire KGW Univision staff so that they can begin to get a better foundation of what exactly is happening. And that will in turn generate even more story ideas from their news editors and producers so that they can sort of begin to not only follow us, but also just get better and more customized stories for their audiences.
Thank you. Why don't you go, Fred, now?
Okay, just a word of caution, Daniel. I really appreciate all you are doing, but you started out with kind of the first couple of slides were painting this rosy picture of the transition of Portland, trying to overcome the doom gloom in the doom loop perception, certainly nationally. And you hear it from some residents as well, which may be why they voted for the change in charter. The proof is going to be in the pudding, and I think maybe some of the communications between now and January should be what the change management, so the streamlining, the increased efficiency, the de-siloization. There's some way to get people to think, oh, things are going to be better that way. We're going to get better services. We're going to get, it's going to be much easier to get a permit to remodel the house or whatever. But those sort of messages, I think, are going to be also quite compelling for people to feel that there's progress and new opportunities with the new form of government. I would recommend that the entire communications team look at our pending draft. I don't think we finalized. We got recommendations on increasing public participation in the budget process, because it'll either be central communications but with budget office or community or community life, but in the DCA's purview with some increased outreach and taking input from citizens through public forums and the like from the beginning of the process through to budget adoption. And so I think we would benefit from your folks' perspective on that and your comments, if we would, if you have time.
I'm sorry, was there a
Just,
question?
no, I was just asking you to look at them and
Yeah,
we're having this session.
I've looked at.
Oh, great, great, great.
Yes.
So we're looking forward to
Yeah.
our listening sessions.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. I'll just echo what others said, just appreciating you all for contributing this, this video, just overview of what you're doing, and it's really exciting to see how much is happening. And I think this is the same question you asked Joe, but is it so in that chart with the new unified comms team, so is your team ending or you guys will fold into another?
Yeah, so our team will be ending at the end of the fiscal year, which would be July.
July of 25.
But as I mentioned, the unified communications team, which currently is a team of 3, is now evolving into the central communications team, which will be a staff of 7. And so while 3 of those folks have occupied seats, there's 4 that are vacant. So those are employees that still need to be hired in this process.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Now I'll hand it over to Julia.
Thanks, Amy. We have till 7:45, a little more than a half hour to talk about ideas for our final 10 months. And we have one task in this work area, which is to create a final report from the perspective of a volunteer advising body on our reflections, lessons, and ideas for improvement. And we appreciate all of you who spoke with us in one-on-one conversations over the past few weeks. It's very informative to us. And there are a lot of themes and ideas that we wanted to share from that. And next slide, please. And we want to spend most of this agenda item on focusing our future work on where we can most make a difference. And we asked members to come prepared to discuss 3 questions today, and let's spend roughly 10 minutes on each, and then we'll come out on target. First, do you agree that GTAC should focus its future work on educating and engaging community, including voter education, and building support for our recommendations by engaging council, candidates, and organizations active with candidates? That's the first question. Second, what should GTAC prioritize from January through March of 2025? And third, do you have any proposed revisions to our work plan? If you want to respond to any of these questions, please raise your hand and I'll sort of see how much time we have to hear from everyone. But let's start with the first question about the focus of our future work. Those 2 bullets. Body. Sorry, for some reason I can't see everybody.
That's 6 hands up.
Okay, we'll start with Joe and then Bill.
I think there's a third bullet, which is we've sort of got ongoing work with the transition team on some things that weren't in our recommendations. The 4 disciplines, working on onboarding. I'm sure there are other things. So there's sort of ongoing work that we're part of. And I don't think we ought to deprioritize that.
Bill.
Thank you. I had a question about what building support for GTAC's recommendations means. That could be political, which would suggest we're promulgating our recommendations and getting support from different communities and organizations. Or it could mean we continue to do our work and follow up on our recommendations provide additional support. I'm just, if I welcome some explication of building support or whether we revise that wording.
Well, I think that's open to interpretation kind of among the committee, but we are planning, Amy and I are planning some meetings with city commissioners coming up in the near future, so that's one part of it. And we haven't worked too much with candidates yet. I mean, I have been talking to a few, but it's probably something we need to flesh out.
Thanks.
Let's go to Destiny and then Juanita. Welcome, Juanita.
Kind of following off of Bill's point, I think it would be great to focus on the recommendations and even like the conversations we've been having in our subcommittees. There's a lot of great conversations there. Okay, that's not it.
Oh, Juanita, I think you need to mute yourself.
Yeah, I just did.
Oh,
Can
yeah.
you hear me? Okay,
We
cool.
need you to mute yourself for that until Destiny's comments finished. There you go.
Thanks, Juanita. Just the GTAX recommendations or ongoing conversations of like district offices or even like centralized public input systems and like, you know, unified communications things. I think it would be great to, even if it's not exactly our recommendations, bringing up those sentiments and concerns we've kept hearing, especially with organizations we're working with, especially with candidates who are going to a bunch of places and things like that, because some of them will be council members of it eventually. And so I think that would be great. And especially this current council because of what's happening there. And so I think that would be a great space to build support and some shared values there, especially like investing in voter education. Like this is the first time the city's done that, like keep that going. And so I think that would be great to do an ongoing in January and March of just being like, there's so much engagement, like how are you gonna maximize that and keep that ongoing type of sentiments in January and March? And then kudos, or not kudos, sorry. Also to Joe's point about like budgeting recommendations to get more public input there. I think that would be very interesting to push forward.
Thanks, Destiny. Let's go to Juanita and then Jose.
Yeah, I agree with Joe's recommendation about the support for GTAC recommendations. In the education and engagement of the community, the contracts have been already, or the grants have already been provided and selected the groups of agencies that are going to be doing the educational piece and the engagement of the community. So I think that I just want to make sure that we don't duplicate efforts with the people who have received grants already doing the community engagement. Definitely the voter education is a really important one, but I think that in this point, again, not to duplicate efforts and build the support for GTAX recommendations would be my priorities.
Thanks, Juanita. Jose.
This might not be popular opinion, but I think the second bullet is a waste of time for the most part. I think any time that we spend trying to meet with current council members to try to change their mind when they have 6 months left in office, to try to engage in with the budgets that's already been worked on is honestly a waste of our time, where we could just spend that time, that 1 hour with community outreach, with telling the community, if you want these kinds of changes implemented, this is where you're going to talk about it. This is what you're going to do. This is how you do this in the future. I honestly don't want to see us spend too much effort meeting with the current council to have it be like running into a wall over and over. Nothing's going to happen. I'd rather us spend the time meeting with community and try to get them ready for the coming election and for the new council. I could even see us sitting down with candidates to kind of express their opinions, because the next council is gonna be new and different and a lot more voices. And our recommendations might actually be heard of a team of all new people that are still kind of finding out what their political persona is. It might make more of a difference doing that. And might sound real cynical, but I'm looking at some of these things about that we came up with to make it easier for all of us. And that seems like something that would just make it harder for us. Because it's the hardest part for me has been seeing our recommendations only be heard, they matched exactly what they wanted to do anyway. So if it's gonna be that same thing over and over, I don't want us to spend our time doing that.
Thanks, Jose. I appreciate that. Let's go to Leah and then Zach.
Me, do you? I jumped you online.
Did you?
Or,
Oh, no, I put my hand up late.
okay.
Well, I can go. Yeah, I agree with you, Jose. I think that we should spend our time, or I would like to see us spend our time building support around the recommendations and research that we've done. But I don't necessarily think that the new council is the audience at all. It's just the new organization, leaders, community leaders, because we've done a lot of research and understanding throughout this. So I see us like moving into a place of being a resource for the community and a resource for the new community of leadership. And we've done like a lot of thinking, like thoughtful work to get these recommendations. So how can we do that? And then also one of our big recommendations has been institutionalized community outreach. So how can we like model what institutionalized community outreach and then maybe hand that off to the new council, and that could be part of our legacy, or thinking in terms of our legacy with the new council. And yeah, I definitely agree that the present council is not our audience per se.
I tend to agree as well. Okay, we'll try Leah again and then Zach.
I'll just say what Jose said. Completely don't think it's really a good use of time to continue to engage current council or even perspective right now. I think my recommendation would be, as we think about this, to think about the timeline of our work, and that perhaps now through November, our focus is the first bullet point, because now is the time when it's crucial to really be engaging community to prepare them for November, recognizing that they have a really big part in deciding what the future government looks like then. And we do still have 7 months after the general election to continue our work. And perhaps once we know who's actually going to be on the new council, that's a better time to move on to that second bullet point of focusing more on engaging not just candidates, but people that we know are actually coming into office.
Okay, if you and, Zach and Terry, if you could take 1 minute each, that will wrap up this.
I think we only have 4 months after the general election.
We're here.
So through March.
Well, one is December.
Okay, I exaggerate.
But your point is valid. Your point is definitely valid. I mean, maybe beating a dead horse, I agree with the last 2 comments on, I think the priority really should be that first bullet point. I see the role of GTAC right now as more of an analog of what we're hearing about the ambassadors and change management within the city. And I did 2 presentations this last week, and no one in the room really had a clue of what was going on with the transition. And I mean, we were getting 3,000 people who are signed up for our newsletter. Like, there is so much unawareness of what's going on that we need to be prioritizing our time in that vein. The recommendations, you know, a lot of them, like it was said, going to be made by future council, also kind of and potentially budget related. So that could be something that we could look at for number 2 of advocating into the new fiscal year. So.
Thanks, Zach. Terry.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly appreciate the utility with which we are presenting our proposals to the new council and the budget process. But I also think, like it or not, there are decision makers for the next several months. And there will be opportunities for our policy points to be input into government before the election and into the transition itself, in the transition, transition. So I think we can't just drop it. And I'm happy to do that work and look ahead and see what we can do. There's a budget note in the budget now that they're going to look at council staffing. And that's only because we presented that, and, they don't take our word for it, and they don't really listen to us or listen to our research, but they're going to go out and find a consultant to do that. And the consultant is going to learn what we already know and what we already told them. But that's something that we need to track and participate in if we can, and advocate for if we have an opportunity. So, I don't want to lose our recommendations just because we're currently frustrated. And I think the best opportunity is certainly the new council. And you get to them through the candidates. And I think this is, realizing this is more than a minute, but we're going into question 2 here next, is that from January to March 2025, we need to think about how we transfer our knowledge and expertise to some other structure to help. And some of that is writing up a report of what we've done, why we've done it, and what it looks like. And that report really is got to be kind of part of the onboard, which means we need to be doing it soon and thinking about that. So I kind of think that those things are still in question 1B, and to prepare us for wrapping things up in question 2 up here. So
I agree that we should get some information out of it that we can plug into the report. I think this idea originally came when we realized that a number of the commissioners don't even realize we existed. And then most of them are trying to come back to City Hall, next year. So there's always that, and probably some of them will make it. I did talk to one of them informally, someone I've known a long time, about some of this, and I got nowhere. So it's gonna be interesting. Okay, let's move on and spend about 8 minutes on the next question, which is what should we prioritize from January to March? And we just talked about that, but a little more singular question. So are these new hands, Joe and Jane?
Mine is a new hand, but I wanted to just point out in the last thing that the other group of sort of stakeholders that we've got is the transition team. And we've been working closely with them on a bunch of things. And I think it's important that we prioritize continuing with them.
Thank you. Let's go to Jane and then Lori. Is your hand up again? Are these new hands I'm seeing? Okay, Jane and then Lori, please.
Yes, thank you. I agree with focusing on getting out in the community between now and the election. And then I think after the election is really when probably the opportunity to do the best work is. I have been disappointed, as it kind of like says on the sheet, the wonderful sheet that we received in advance from Julia and June and Amy and Juliet. What's not worked is the ability to influence city leaders. And maybe there is an opportunity after the election. And I would like to see a small subcommittee make a plan for that work. What I don't want us to do is to think that after the election, because we've been asked to stay a bit longer until March, that we see this as a time to wrap up. I kind of think it's a really, really good opportunity to make sure that everybody who has been elected has read a bunch of our proposals and that they have come and met with us. and that they know that we have been a good resource. And maybe there are a couple of them that want to even use that resource as they try and find their way in their new jobs. So as I explained to Amy and Juliet, who were kind enough to listen to us all, I'm convinced that we need to go on a high note and with a high energy and a lot of work in those few months, but we need a plan. I would actually be really pleased just to sort of backpedal from now until then, to go and do the community outreach stuff, to work on, you know, tables in park events and what have you, but to really focus on what the hell we're going to do after November. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, Jane. How about 90 seconds, Lori, and then Jose?
I actually feel the opposite of what Jane just said. I feel like this, between now and the election, is the time that we're working on supporting the transition. I think it's a great opportunity for us to continue to engage the community and educate them. I think that's really important. I think to Terry's point, I think we have the opportunity during the onboarding to try to influence and provide some recommendations or support for our recommendations with the candidates. And then, so I think that working on the report sooner than later is really important. I'm conscious that we continue to lose members of the committee, and we still have a long way to go. And so signing up for an aggressive plan of extra things that we're going to do between January and March, I think is potentially will be difficult on the few that are still part of the committee. So.
Lori, Jose.
Yeah, I wish this section didn't say January to March, but more the day after the election to March, because I think that's what it feels like it should be the correct. Because I kind of agree with the hybrid of what Jane and Lori said. We have a lot of important work to the election, but I disagree with Terry's assertion that if we stop trying to engage current council, we're giving up our recommendations. I just think just the opposite. Like Lori said, once they get elected and they start onboarding, and then we have new people that are coming to office, that is going to be what I think going to be the most good we can do in getting some of our recommendations really seriously looked at by this whole new group of people. So I think it's going to change gear. Community engagement body up to the election to really a lobbying body towards all these recommendations we researched and thought about, and then trying to share that research and how we came to those conclusions to all the new candidates. So it's really going to change completely. And I agree with Lori. I don't think people are going to be wanting to take a whole new thing for it. It might be a lot, but it's going to be completely different. We won't have as much engagement with the community. So I don't think it'd be a lot of work. It'll just be different work.
Jose. Joe and Jane, is your hand up again or still?
I'm not sure that our community engagement efforts are going to be done with the election. I think there's going to be a lot of people in November and a lot of people in January who are saying, wait a second, we've got 12 councilmen. What's going on here? And I think that there are going to be lots of need and maybe lots of opportunities for doing community engagement through March and beyond. I don't know if that's our responsibility, but there's going to be a lot of people that are sort of surprised when they get their ballots.
I agree with that completely. All right, unless there's anything else burning on this question, let's move on to the third one, which is, do you have any proposed revisions to our work plan?
I'll own that this is somewhat discomforting coming from a chairperson, but I generally find our work plan to be kind of like lacking the whole vision, or like, what are we trying to do? It feels like very granular. So the revision I would suggest is us thinking of like top line things that we're trying to get done in the next 10 months. So not like necessarily changes, but just sort of headers for the work plan. Because right now, I think there's so much going on, and I just wish that I could like come back to like, are we doing A, B, C? And thinking about our goals like that. So the revision I suggest is like headers or summaries that are very specific goals that we have for the next 10 months.
Thank you. Anything else about that? Joe?
I agree with Amy. And here's one more grain, which is that the 4 disciplines emerged after we did our work plan, but now we're involved in that work. So somehow it ought to be on our work plan.
Fred?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Both of you make good points, and I agree. I find the work plan to be kind of overwhelming in the way it's structured and the dates and all the different subtitles, et cetera, that I just thinking, well, maybe I'll just wait till somebody asks me to do something. Because I can't quite tell. May I volunteer to be on a subcommittee? And I talked to Julia about, well, I do want to know more about X or Y. And she leads me to a right place, but then I don't know quite how to implement that. I'm happy to talk to community groups but it's a little overwhelming for me, the way it's structured now. And I'm assuming that I'm doing my part. No one's told me to get off the committee, but many of you have thought of it too. But still, it's a little too complex. And I like the idea of prioritizing what we do between now and next March.
Thanks, Fred. Any other thoughts about the work plan? Or any other comments about the 3 questions? Because we still have a few more minutes to talk about it. No? They're tired of talking about it. All right, well.
It's like a question to the group, which is that how can we come to consensus around what we want to do? And like by email or what does it look like for us to find these priorities? Because it seems like in this discussion, people were really all in many different places. And there's many situations where somebody felt something and then the opposite. So maybe this is something we revisit, come back to, but just if anybody has ideas about what that would look like to do that work.
Thanks, Amy. So let's talk about practices moving forward. Based on our recent conversations with you on the committee and staff, there are 4 sets of improved practices we will try. First, we'll set time expectations and individualize work. Tomorrow, staff will send out a survey to assess members' interest in our summer activities. Based on the survey results, co-chairs and staff will work with members to individualize workloads based on their interests and to meet time expectations. Second, we'll improve meeting practices. As with every co-chair rotation, Amy and I are bringing in some new meeting practices, and we ask you to continue giving us feedback or other suggestions for improvement or what we're doing that you like and you want us to keep doing. Third, streamline communications. If there are a few practices here we want to remind you about. 1, if you want to connect with the transition team, work through Julia in June. They are responsible for communicating with other city staff on your behalf and following up. 2, if there's something you want shared with the GTAC, a resource, news, item, event, etc., please send it to Julia only. She'll pull everything together and send out an email to the committee with that information. 3, if there's something you want GTAC to discuss in a meeting, email Amy and me or whoever the co-chairs are next and Julia with the proposed agenda item. 4th, we'll clarify roles. There are 2 pieces to this. 1, by default, when city staff attend GTAC events, they will serve in a supporting or secondary capacity. They will only take on a co-presenting role if it has been requested or arranged in advance. The exception is when community groups request a long ranked choice voting presentation or the use of a mock election platform, then a staff member will join. 2, we'll reaffirm the GTAC's role in ensuring that community input is meaningfully integrated. As we enter a summer of engagement, we want to emphasize that it is our responsibility to bring Portlanders' input into our work. We will remind you of these new or renewed practices by email, so please try them out and remember to share any feedback with Amy and me. And I'll pass it back to Amy now.
Good, we have a few extra minutes for this discussion. So yeah, now we're going to move to talk about community feedback and staff responses. Civic life response is that there is no established, oh my God. All right, we have until 7:55 on community feedback and staff responses. As a reminder, we have one task in this work area to report community feedback and questions to the transition staff with staff providing answers. Members identified community questions related to the recent votes by neighborhood associations to be in district coalitions that don't align with the 4 voting districts, and what Civic Life's process is and whether the process is in ONI standards. I don't know.
Office of Neighborhood Involvement.
Okay. We asked the staff to reach out to Civic Life for a response. Civic Life's response is, there is no established process as a part of ONI standards. It is the decision of the interim director, Morad Ratbi, to deny the neighborhood association's requests to be represented by a district coalition outside of a geographic voting district under a new service model. The 4 nonprofit organizations selected by the Office of Civic and Community Life are funded with non-negotiable expectation of full compliance with the ONI standards. The mayor supported this decision in a memo. The information was sent to all neighborhood associations and district coalition offices last week of May. Civic Life maintains a DCO model update page. You can find more information about this process there, and GTAC can refer members of the public back to this page or the Civic Life at portlandoregon.gov for questions. Folks have any additional community input on this topic that you would want staff to find info for? So we have about 12 minutes for this. I'll take hands and then, so I've got Leah, Juliet, Harry, Jose. Okay, so keeping comments close to 90 seconds as possible. Leah, go ahead.
Okay, trying to think of how to ask this as nicely as possible. Why are we talking about this? Is it something that we've had an extraordinary amount of public comment coming in about?
Well, I think that the issue was that people had heard murmurs of Civic Life, and then there was some conversation around the Southeast Neighborhood Association voting to leave the 4th district and join the 3rd district. And that precipitated a bunch of questions about, is that possible? Are people able to make like that? And so that's what we found ourselves in.
Yeah, I guess my question is broader, like, is this a concern of GTAC members, or is this something that we have been hearing based on our community engagement?
Community engagement.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, just because it's not something I ever hear about when doing community engagement. So I'm curious.
I think the answer is
yeah. Thank you.
Leah. Okay. Let's start Terry, Jose, Juliet.
Yeah, I mean, it is something that I hear about at neighborhood associations when I go listen to them, because they are furious with Civic Life. They are botching the rollout of these DCOs. And it's couched in the language of the transition, that we are transitioning to districts, and now Civic Life is transitioning to districts. It's part of the government transition, and that's the way it is. And so when we, as representatives of the transition, go talk to neighborhood associations, they're cranky about it. And so whether that's in our scope or not has always been sort of a question for GTAC. And here we are at a meeting trying to reduce our scope, I guess, is what sounded like that last discussion. And this isn't squarely in our work plan. I personally think it should be, because of the way Civic Life is going about it. and, and, and contextualizing this as part of, you now have districted representation. You will now coordinate in a district coalition in those same boundaries. And no one thought of that earlier. And it's like civic life has freelanced the way they're going to do this. So I'm frustrated. The neighborhood associations are frustrated. And I think, you know, we're sort of stuck. I don't know what to do about it. I sympathize with the neighborhood associations and the neighborhood coalitions. If we could do something, I'd like to do something, but I'm not sure we can. Anyway, that's where I was going.
Okay, as usual, I'm here to provide the counterpoint to Terry. I'm from District 1 and I've heard all about this, and I've heard all about how they love that this is happening, how everything that all the other districts are mad about is because they have a lot smaller neighborhoods that have to deal with way less population, while we have giant neighborhoods where a small group of leaders has to do the same with the same or less amount of money, but 2 or 3 times as many people in some neighborhoods. Now all of a sudden they're doing the money by person. So the East Portland is like, oh, we're finally getting funding. One, we're finally getting a district coalition at all because we didn't have one. And we have all of a sudden a group that's supporting us and gonna help us with printing. And like, these are very minor things that they're super excited it's happening, or at least they're hopeful and excited that it's happening. So they're hearing about these complaints now, they should get more money, but Eastport, all they hear is, are they trying to take money back now that we're finally getting? So it's kind of like the haves, the whole life are finally getting more equity, and it's hard for them to get less money. But it's becoming more fair. That's what it looks like to District 1. So not all the neighborhood associations are super mad about it, just the ones that are getting less money now because it's being divided equally and not by neighborhood association. Why haven't they talked about, well, maybe you have too many neighborhood associations. If we can handle twice as many population with one, why can't you? And then you wouldn't have to pay double insurance and double things for having two. Like, look at other options than saying we need to get more money. Yes, change is hard. When you move to a different setup and now you're going to have less familiarity, which is one of the arguments. Yes, but if you never change, then you're always going to have that one thing. Change is hard. There's going to be less familiarity for a while, but then you will become familiar with the new system, and then that won't be an issue. Hopefully, it'll be more equitable across the city instead of the way it used to be, which did not feel that way, and which is why East Portland never talks up, because they're used to not being listened to. So they're glad to see some changes are happening.
Juliet, Jane, and Fred.
Okay, so let's put the money part aside. I think there was some upset about that for a while. I think at least my neighborhood and coalition have kind of moved on from that. And that's not what I see as the problem. What I see as the problem is lack of clarity and hasty, premature decisions that were based on nothing that was substantiated to us. Parts of this transition have undergone excruciating analysis and comps and data and parsing and charts and PowerPoints. And then the city turns around and they just spontaneously decide to match districts to coalitions. They spontaneously decide that there's going to be an office in each district. And now there's this decision that actually came from the mayor that districts or neighborhoods can't switch districts. I understand. And so speaking of community outreach, I think this is an important question because they are such an important part of our community outreach now and in the future. So speaking of community outreach, I knew nothing about this until I heard it from Julia, and I'm on a neighborhood association board. So I dug around and I got the email sent to me, and it was actually a letter from the mayor to Murad saying neighborhoods can't switch. What it doesn't say is, and I can understand why the mayor would make that decision, right? There's enough going on right now. We don't need any more chaos. And at this point, the neighborhoods have already written their work plans and budgets and are rewriting their bylaws based on these districts and boundaries. So that's okay. What he didn't say, and what's not clear to me, and this is just back to the lack of clarity, is can they do it in the future? And what's the process? Can they do it after the election? You know, this is going to continue to be a question and it needs to be decided. Maybe the new council will decide, that's fine by me. But to me, it's just dropping these decisions on the city that have really affected neighborhoods, have really affected this committee, and they are, they're just not clear. So if they were more prescribed and justified, yeah, shut up. I think it would be, people would be less frustrated. And we got some information from June that I really appreciated, but it just didn't clarify any of this, and neither do these links. So
apologize, you're out of time.
I know.
You need to be more,
I didn't care.
Okay, we've got Jane, Fred, and Joe, and if
you need to be more heavy-handed about it.
okay, great, yeah.
Yeah.
Stop talking. Okay, we've got Jane, Fred, and Joe, and I'll be heavy-handed and cutting off. at
Giving me
a minute
30
15.
seconds.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you. The biggest part, the only part of successful community outreach for the city of Portland right now is the work that has been done all of the years within the neighborhoods. So first of all, we have to remember that this is a huge part of community outreach. So I don't think that we can fix it, but I think it's going to be a right mess, and it is already a mess. I mean, Darlene, lovely Darlene, who was at this first thing, she's pretty frazzled. When I went to Mount Tabor, they're pretty ticked off. So I'm hoping that the outreach officer can appreciate, maybe we can help them, that in fact our neighborhood associations are a phenomenal community outreach, and it is not, whatever has been planned is not working. So probably the first piece of work that he or she needs to do is to take a good look at that and make some decisions. But I don't think that we personally as GTAC can fix it. But we do not want to lose this. I mean, when I used to do community outreach work, I went through all the neighborhood associations. That's where I went in order to be able to get to neighborhoods and hear what they had to say. And I worked through what was then the City Neighborhood Association group. So
thank you, Jane. I gotta cut you off.
Thank you, I'm done.
Okay, Fred and Joe, and I'm really cutting off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amy, you need a buzzer. I hesitate to suggest that maybe we should hear from City Life and their plan before we reach judgment about what's wrong with it or the like.
Yeah, we don't know.
And listen to what their plan is. I think this goes back way beyond, it was not spontaneous. I sat in on district commission hearings as a greeter and all that. I think Joe and I were one together. Where the neighborhood associations were quite vociferous about representing where they wanted the boundaries to be. And that's why the boundary between 3 and 2 jig jogs across Sandy Boulevard, one thing, because Hollywood wanted to be one way or the other. But the one thing they could not accommodate was when they had to come up with equal population, which is a requirement, they went over to Selwood and Eastmoreland. And that's where I think the smile is where the big excitement is about. And I know that Joe has heard from that, Terry, that but it's either that or the Lloyd district, and they pick, they had to pick one or the other. And it changes hard. I agree with Jose that we've got to get along with it. And but I'm afraid if we have a presentation from the City Life, that there's enough antagonism here by certain members as to what has already transpired that it won't be we won't have a constructive role as a committee.
Last comment, Joe, you've got 1 minute, 15 seconds.
There is a problem. We've heard many different aspects of that problem. It's a real problem. It involves real people, and it's been associated with the transition. Do we have a role in that? I hope we do. but it's not clear to me that we do or what it is.
Thank you for being succinct. I will. So we'll next slide, back to the slide. So I'll just start talking so we can end on time. As always, any questions asked and not answered during the meeting will be answered by writing in writing by staff. The recording of this meeting will be posted on the committee's website and is available after the meeting ends on the Office of Management and Finance YouTube channel. Next District and Council Operations Subcommittee meeting is June 17th. We have our first community listening session on our draft recommendations on June 25th. Please register via Zoom. The next meeting of the Voter and Candidate Education's Outreach Subcommittee is June 27th. Next slide, please. So meeting adjourned. I want to thank everyone for your participating tonight. We are adjourned.
Can I ask a question before we adjourn?
Yeah, we have 3 minutes.
We're sort of invited to stick around and socialize after this. We're just in the middle of a heated discussion. Are we supposed to not talk about GTAG business after we adjourn?
Yes.
Unless there's less than 7.
Right. Public records.
Thank you. We are re-adjourned. Gosh, you're really getting iced out there.
I know, like, can any of you all of a sudden?
About 45 spotlight.